Well, ladies and gentlemen, I've got to say that today's political updates are very, very interesting and very telling. But anyway, before we get on to the main video of today, can I yet again remind you, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. As I've said in other videos, YouTube isn't promoting YouTube longs, it's promoting YouTube shorts. So you really do need to share this video with your friends. So let's start off with the first one. Now, this is a clip that's emerged of Geordin Hill-Lewis, who had the following to say about Donald Trump. Have a watch.
I noticed hesitance, particularly with the mention of Elon Musk. Is the DA too careful to tell either Elon Musk or indeed the current Washington leadership to stop poking their noses in South Africa's domestic policy? Is that something that you fear to do as the DA?
No, not at all. I'm no fan of MAGA and no fan of Mr. Trump whatsoever. I think he's put the world in a very dangerous place and in many ways is quite reprehensible, actually. So I hold no candle whatsoever for that policy and that administration.
Why is this video clip so interesting? Well, because in other news, US Marines took Cape Town Metro police officer candidates through a beach fitness session in Cape Town, which sparked questions over whether any national approval was needed for the joint cooperation and whether a foreign military should be anywhere near municipal policing structures. Now, if this was a Chinese delegation, I'm pretty sure it would be fine, but then US people, terribly bad. Now, the city of Cape Town insists that it was just an informal fitness exercise and not a formal training exercise, and says that the cost to the city was nothing. The goods representative, the no good party, says that the explanation is just not enough, and they would do because obviously they're trying to win any form of Cape Town elections against the DA. And they argued that municipal police are regulated nationally and asked the question as to what legal authority allowed the engagement. So why is this so important? Well, in one respect, the Cape Town mayor says that he finds Donald Trump to be so terrible, and yet there his Metro police officers are engaging in training with the US Marines. So what's actually going on here? Well, I really wish I knew, but as you know, currently the US and South Africa are in a war of words, specifically over the allegations made in recent days by Elon Musk, who complained about South Africa's BEE licensing criteria, specifically around his desire to get a license for Starlink. Now, Elon Musk says that he's facing discrimination and continues to feel that diplomatic law in South Africa is really not very good. Now, Cyril Ramaphosa actually directly addressed this. He said that those who single out BEE laws are quite dishonest. Have a watch.
When it comes to the social media brouhaha from Elon Musk, I pay very little attention to that because I know our laws are not racist. They are empowerment laws that are meant to empower the various people in our country who were discriminated against. And discrimination was perpetrated against black people, in particular Africans, colored and Indians. It was perpetrated against the women of our country. May I say, white women were also affected. And what we are seeking to do in implementing the constitutional imperative that is in our constitution is to redress the imbalances of the past. And to do so, the constitution has empowered us to pass laws that are empowering, not racist.
Now, as we're talking about Elon Musk, we should refer to his father, Errol Musk. Now, it's important to understand that Errol Musk is a bit of a, what I can only describe as eccentric individual. But he says that he's involved in a Russian plan to offer refugee status to South African farmers, with Russian officials saying that around 50 Afrikaner families could be resettled in Russia through their refugee program. I don't know if I believe this, but makes for an interesting read. Now, as we're talking about America, it's important to understand that in the last few days, Cyril Ramaphosa has decided to do the impossible, and he's appointed a new US ambassador who's replaced Rasul after a year of no ambassador. Now, as you know, there was a lot of pressure placed on Ramaphosa to appoint somebody that would be very good for the job. And who did he decide to pick? Roelf Meyer. Now, Roelf Meyer was a very interesting choice because in recent days, many individuals are questioning the suitability of Roelf Meyer specifically because of the long-term relationship that he's had with Cyril Ramaphosa. Many individuals are recirculating old videos. Now, Ramaphosa had the following to say about Roelf Meyer.
Roelf Meyer is a South African, a very loyal and patriotic South African who has distinguished himself in a number of areas where he has worked. And yes, he did lead the National Party negotiating team together with myself. He was a cabinet minister in the initial government of national unity and has done very well in those areas. And when we needed to appoint an ambassador to the United States, I found him to be more than qualified to be able to work in the United States, recalibrate our relationship with the United States, interface with a number of stakeholders in the United States. The United States is the largest economy in the world, and it still plays an important role in our own economic fortunes. But more than that, at the diplomacy level, there's quite a lot of work that needs to be done to recalibrate and in some ways repair the relationship with the United States.
Now, it's important to understand that Cyril has a very long relationship with Roelf Meyer. Roelf Meyer being involved in the CODESA negotiations of '94. In fact, many individuals are recirculating video footage from that era showing Roelf engaging in the negotiations itself. Have a watch.
You can see this process of ANC National Party cooperating against the rest. For example, if there's some problems or suddenly there's a veto or something that's just got stuck, then firstly, Slovo will pick it up. And you can see he sort of writes a small note to Ramaphosa. Ramaphosa would then wink for Roelf Meyer, and the two of them will go outside. They would formulate some sort of proposal, come back, the one would propose, the other one would second it, and it was just being forced through.
We maintained a very close link.
So why is this important? Well, it's important because pressure in the relationship between the United States and America continues as Trump continues to make claims around white Afrikaner persecution, land sieges, and obviously the refugee issue. Now, Meyer is being presented as a veteran negotiator and one of the key figures in South Africa's democratic transition. Obviously, he was involved in this negotiation. So the idea is that he is the ideal candidate to rebuild trust in Washington amidst the hostile environment. But you see, the problem becomes that many individuals are saying that Roelf Meyer may be only there to further Cyril Ramaphosa's objectives and not that of the country. In other words, does he truly understand that he's there representing the country and not the political party of the ANC, given his long-term links to Cyril Ramaphosa? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. But we have to now go on to probably the most interesting and important news article of the day. I've got to say, in many respects, I watched the entire thing and thought it was an entire farce, or at least an entire joke. And that is the pre-sentencing that occurred with Julius Malema in the East London Magistrates Court. So, Julius arrived at the scene. Have a watch. Why is this clip important? Well, go back and watch it. He's got some guy in the front with a knobkerrie, with a yarmulke on his head and a Star of David. Another guy, if you look to the right, has another older version of a yarmulke with actually a menorah on it. Looks like he's surrounded by, I don't know, black African Jews. I thought Julius doesn't like Zionists. I thought that was the whole gig. He doesn't like Zionists because of like Israel bad or something. Free Palestine. But here he is surrounded by what I can only describe as weird-looking individuals with Jewish regalia. Then Julius Malema said that, this was all a political witch hunt. But we were reminded that Julius was found guilty of violating the Firearms Control Act 60 of 2000. And as I mentioned in my video yesterday, the state decided that they wanted to push forward for the maximum sentence to be applied to Julius Malema, which is 15 years imprisonment. Now, the Youth Command Center went out and demonstrated to show that they would take over the streets in support of Julius Malema. Have a watch. Why is this important? Well, you can see the political retardation in the country is just at an all-time high. But in any case, what it also shows you is that Julius was no stranger to mobilizing individuals, which, to be honest, comes as a surprise to none of us. Now, in court, Julius Malema said that the entire thing was actually a conspiracy theory by AfriForum, who was pursuing a political campaign against him.
You're hoping everything is going to go okay?
No, when you are in the hands of imperialism, nothing becomes okay.
Julius Malema then, addressing his supporters, stated that he was in no doubt that capital had played a central role in an attempt to silence radical voices in South Africa, and that capital was attempting to silence him, and he would not be silenced. Have a watch.
Against this persecution, which was brought to us by AfriForum, we must never forget the fact that we are here because of the AfriForum.
Now, in response, the state suggested that Julius Malema's utterances showed that he actually had no remorse for what he had done, and that he still thought that he was above the law and shouldn't have to be held accountable for his own actions.
Until today, he still doesn't see what he did, what danger it posed, and what its consequences could have been. His position as a public leader and a role model to the young and to society. The fact that he's a lawmaker breaking the law. If the court imposes a custodial sentence, it will satisfy the principles as set out in State versus Zin. And the court will do its constitutional mandate of equal treatment before the law, and will serve the legitimate and pressing interests of a society that has the right to expect that its leaders and lawmakers be subjected and to obey the same law that they are elected to uphold.
In defense, Julius Malema's advocate now was caught by surprise because he actually has the same advocate who, if you recall, this is the guy who took Israel to the ICJ on behalf of the South African government. So I'm quite surprised to see that he's working on behalf of Julius Malema in the pre-sentencing trial. How did Julius get this advocate? Was he assigned by the state? Is this the guy who gets assigned for all the state's interesting politically sensitive cases? Strange to see the same advocate all over again, but in any case, this individual asked the question. He said, how does Julius Malema blaming AfriForum translate to a lack of remorse? He suggested that, if you look at it, he was just explaining his position. The judge also said, well, according to her, Julius Malema had also blamed the Holy Spirit. And he said, yeah, but I'm not dealing with the Holy Spirit. In fact, have a watch.
It is the state that says that Mr. Malema lacks remorse because he has blamed AfriForum. I'm simply explaining.
And the Holy Spirit, including...
I'm not dealing with the Holy Spirit, I'm dealing with AfriForum. Mr. Malema is entitled to regard AfriForum as a political adversary and to criticize it for an unfair prosecution because he believes that they are behind his prosecution. What you cannot do, you cannot take that political statement by Mr. Malema and take it to account in sentencing.
Now, Julius Malema's advocate says that Julius Malema is entitled to view AfriForum as a political adversary and that his statement should not be taken into account during sentencing. But you see, Mr. Advocate, we all know that the purpose of sentencing is to reflect the individual's remorse and the punishment that should be applied in response to it. Julius Malema's statements do show that he lacks remorse and still chooses to blame every other individual for his own ills. So yes, they should be taken into account during his sentencing. AfriForum did not give him the rifle and did not ask him to shoot it in the air while singing "Kill the Boer," because let us not forget that that's exactly how he got to this situation. Now, Julius Malema has already made his position well known in that he suggests that regardless of what the decision is, he's going to appeal it. So won't stick for a very long time. In fact, have a watch.
They found me guilty, and I said I'm going to appeal. That we're waiting for sentencing. And if they send me to prison, I will appeal immediately. I will have a team in Bisho and a team in East London the same day. Once she says, so whatever, yes, then we put in a leave to appeal. Once she rejects it, the Bisho team will petition the High Court and then send us a proof that they've already petitioned the High Court, and we give it to her and say to her, because High Court has been petitioned, we are now appealing for bail. And if she refuses the bail, we'll also immediately petition the High Court, which means a judge will be there, a judge who deals with agent matters will be in Bisho. We'll have to hear why this guy is being denied bail. I've been going to that court for the past 7 years. I've never missed a single court date. Why would you deny me bail? I'm a political leader. I'm a leader of a political party. So I'm here. If bail granted, then I continue business as usual, because appeal suspend the decision of the lower court.
Now, leaving the trial, Julius Malema said that nothing will disrupt his revolution and that he stands unshaken by the threats of white supremacists. The white supremacists obviously being AfriForum. He said that he's too old to be shaken by young Afrikaans boys. Have a watch.
We want to reassure all of them that there is nothing that will disrupt the revolution. I stand before you unshaken by the threats of white supremacists. And because I fought them when I was still young, I'm too old to be shaken by young Afrikaner boys that have defeated their parents.
So yep, that was the pre-sentencing. And tomorrow, the time when you're watching this video, well, the sentencing will actually be handed down. Now, Julius's advocates did warn the courts in handing out a custodial sentence, saying that if they do hand a custodial sentence, it could risk inflaming the country. And so what we may see tomorrow, if Julius is sentenced to jail, is a repeat of the July riots 2021, where Jacob Zuma was sent into custody. However, if that doesn't occur, it shows you something that many of us already know. Julius Malema is last year's news. Nobody cares about him now. His political party is a 5% party. Yes, his party is well known to get violent when it doesn't get its own way, but who cares? People are rejecting the message of Malema. At least that's my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments. Until next time, bye.